now-departed founder of sportswear brand Lululemon, Chip Wilson, has recently been criticised. He criticised the company first for being too inclusive, and then he was criticised for saying that some women are simply too fat to wear leggings.
A spokesperson for the brand has said Lululemon, it's easy for me to say, is committed to fostering a diverse and welcoming environment.
Yes, so this morning we are asking the question, is it OK to call women fat?
Let's talk to Steve Miller, former presenter of Fat Families, who joins us now. Steve, good to see you this morning. Can we call people fat, and should fat people wear leggings?
Well, I think that it all depends about context, first of all. So I would never suggest running around the streets shouting, "Oi, fatty, do something about it." That would be completely wrong. But it's also about how it's done and the tone of it as well. And I think it's ridiculous to start thinking about banning the word fat, because what do you replace it with? I wrote a few examples. Do we replace it with rotund? Do we replace it with portly rather than fat? Do we replace it with chubby, obese, okay, thick? I've even seen that mentioned. Or you're getting a bit wide. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I think those words are more insulting than the word fat. So I always say to people, it depends in what context, it depends how it's said. And one of my favourite strap lines is, I always tell my ladies, "You're too gorgeous to be fat." And they seem to love it.
Oh, that's quite a nice way of putting it. I mean, we've got loads of emails in on this, Steve, as you can imagine. Dennis has emailed in to say doctors need to say you are carrying too much fat, so make it a fact rather than an insult. Is that something that's perhaps a bit more acceptable?
Well, I mean, we're still using the word fat. I just think doctors, should be empowered to tell it as it is. You're going to save somebody's life. I mean, if you're fat, you're fat. I mean, people say, "Oh, replace it with the word overweight." Well, what does overweight mean? Overweight means you're too fat. And we're going around the houses with this word. And the thing to remember, of course, is that being fat, the word fat won't hurt you necessarily. Being fat might, and that is the difference. So I think anyone that's moaning constantly from a political correctness perspective, well, I have two words for them: fat off.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are in this situation now, and this guy, Chip Wilson, has been criticised partly for sort of, body shaming, which is a big thing now, and I find myself torn, because you don't want to body shame anyone. You don't want to make anyone feel bad if they're happy in life and getting on with things. However, that seems to then override the health concerns.
Yes, on the one hand, you see, we've got everyone's saying that being obese is unhealthy and it can create lots of illnesses, and that's absolutely correct. But on the other hand, you've got this conflict because you've got this normalization where it's all about, we've gone from the catwalk to the fatwalk. Let's all celebrate our curves. Curves is another euphemism for fat, and it is a balancing act. But yes, it is also. I hold my hands up to this. It's also about recognizing people deserve to be who they want to be. I accept that. And it's not about being horrible to the person when they're fat. It's about supporting them. But supporting them means telling the truth. And the word fat says it as it is. And over 20 years of working with people and readily using the word fat, I can honestly say I've never had anyone that's moaned about me using the word fat. And in fact, a lot of them actually quite like it. A lot of my ladies, they love it. I mean, it makes them laugh. We have a good giggle about it. They call themselves massive fatties.
Well, look, we're out of time, really, but I want to ask you this, because since we've got you and you're an expert on all this, you may as well get your advice, because Paul's been in touch. And he says, "I'm clinically obese with mobility issues, fatty liver disease, diabetes and a heart condition." He says, "I love food. I think I'm probably addicted to food. I'm on the waiting list for gastric surgery, but the wait is 6 years, and that's just to see the weight management team to start the process." What should someone like Paul do?
Well, there are a few things. Number one, I would say to Paul is to make sure that he's not dieting, that he's living 80-20. So he's eating 80% well, 20% depending on what he fancies. Number two, he's got to find his motivators. You know, weight loss and weight management is a challenge of the mind. So he's got to find some things that will motivate him and drive him. And the third thing, rather than throwing himself on the operating table, what I would say is think about some alternatives. One of the things that I advocate heavily, excuse the pun, is clinical hypnosis. It can help. It can really, really help people, especially to control the food intake.
Yeah, I have heard that, actually. Steve Miller, former presenter of Fat Families, thank you very much indeed.